There is this very specific, almost intoxicating kind of optimism that lives in a brand new gym membership.
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there.
Right. Like, paint the picture for yourself. It is Monday morning. You have got those pristine new running shoes that still smell like the cardboard box, a perfectly clean water bottle, and you've made this quiet, determined promise to yourself to finally get things sorted out.
The whole this time is different mindset.
Exactly. And that first week, it feels serious. It feels hopeful. Honestly, it feels almost cinematic, you know? You leave the gym a little sore, but you are glowing with this very distinct kind of pride.
Yeah, because you were riding an incredible wave of initial momentum. The inherent friction of changing your lifestyle simply hasn't registered in your brain yet.
It really hasn't. Inevitably, though, something shifts. We hit what is culturally known as the 3-week wall.
The infamous wall.
Yeah. By week 3, reality just stops offering free trials and starts charging full price. The physical soreness really sets in, and life gets in the way.
Because a meeting runs late at work, or the kids are sick.
Or the car needs gas. Suddenly, that magical, undeniable motivation turns into these very polite, very rational internal negotiations. You know the exact ones I'm talking about. Like, I'll just skip today and restart properly next week.
Right, and people tend to internalize that specific drop-off as a profound personal moral failure.
Oh, totally.
They sit in their cars and think, I'm just naturally lazy, or I simply don't have the willpower that other people have.
Which is exactly why we are doing a deep dive today. Our mission is to really extract the mechanics of this 3-week wall. Because quitting at week 3 is rarely about being weak.
No, not at all. It is about friction.
Right. It's about friction. It's about the neuroscience of reward timing and, this cultural trap of treating exercise like a temporary moral crusade instead of a sustainable behavior.
That's a great way to put it.
Think of it this way. The first week of working out is like a highly edited cinematic training montage. You've got a cool soundtrack, rapid progress, intense focus.
Like a movie.
Exactly. But the third week is a gritty, unscripted documentary of normal adulthood. It is doing laundry, dealing with traffic, and trying to exercise with a dull headache.
And the reason that documentary phase feels so impossibly hard is because we try to power it with the completely wrong fuel.
What do you mean by wrong fuel?
Well, we hit the wall because we attempt to transition from that cinematic feeling of the first week into the gritty reality of the third week without altering our underlying psychological approach.
Okay, I see.
We are essentially dealing with two completely different engines. There's the emotion engine versus the structure engine.
Right, because the initial start is powered almost entirely by emotion, isn't it?
Yes, mostly emotion.
Like you see a photo of yourself you didn't like, or maybe you are just sick of feeling sluggish by 2 in the afternoon every single day. Or you just crave a profound feeling of control over an otherwise chaotic life.
Which is a very powerful catalyst. Emotion is undeniably effective at getting you to put on your shoes and walk through the gym doors for the very first time. But emotion is volatile. It naturally spikes and it inevitably crashes.
Right.
When that initial emotional intensity fades, you are left with the raw logistical behavior itself. You have to physically pack a bag, travel to a specific location, tolerate a high degree of physical discomfort, carve out an hour of your day.
And do it all over again, even on a Tuesday when your boss yelled at you and it's raining outside.
Exactly. Which completely flips the script on how we usually talk about fitness. The cultural cliche is always, the hardest part is just getting started.
Oh, I hear that all the time. But that's actually false,
It's
right?
completely false.
Yeah.
The starting part is relatively easy because you are armed with that emotional high. The hardest part is actually the awkward middle phase.
That sort of purgatory where you're no longer running on the thrill of a bold new decision, but you also haven't done it long enough to build a stable habit.
Right. You're running purely on raw effort. And psychologically speaking, effort is incredibly expensive.
So it just drains you.
It does. What's fascinating here is that we talk about the 3-week wall as this cultural shorthand, but the drop-off is massive right in that early window.
How massive are we talking?
If you miss just 2 consecutive days in your first month, your probability of quitting entirely spikes by over 70%.
Wow, over 70% just from missing 2 days.
Yeah, it's not a slow fade. It's an absolute cliff.
Yeah.
Nearly half of people quit by the 12-week mark.
So that first 3 to 6 months is basically the ultimate danger zone.
Precisely. Because of that cognitive expense we talked about, the brain consumes about 20% of our daily calories, despite being a tiny fraction of our body weight. It desperately wants to automate behaviors to save energy.
Makes sense.
So when you are forcing a new routine purely through conscious willpower, your brain is actively resisting the energy drain.
Okay, wait, let's unpack this for a second. You are making emotion sound almost like a trap.
Well, it can be.
But if emotion is the only thing strong enough to overcome that initial physical inertia, isn't it completely necessary? I mean, we need that spark. So how are you supposed to transition from that emotional spark to a cold, hard structure before the fuel runs out?
That is the big question.
Because you certainly can't just manufacture a biological habit overnight.
You can't. And that timeline mismatch is where the biggest foundational mistakes happen. Because we are running on that high-octane emotion in the beginning, we make massive logistical errors right out of the gate.
Like what kind of errors?
We build complex systems, but we don't build them for our actual deeply flawed selves. We build them for our fantasy self.
Oh, man. The ideal self-routine.
Yes.
This is where we accidentally design our own elaborate punishment, isn't it?
We do it every time.
You sit down on a Sunday night, feeling incredibly motivated, and you design a routine for the person you wish you were. You know, you haven't worked out in 3 years, and suddenly you commit to a 5-day-a-week heavy lifting split.
Waking up at 5 a.m.
Right. Doing these punishing workouts that you copied step by step from some hyper-confident fitness influencer online.
Because we culturally associate seriousness with suffering. We tell ourselves that if we aren't training to the absolute point of exhaustion, we aren't actually trying.
But then basic biology enters the chat.
Exactly. You execute that extreme workout on Monday, and the result is delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS.
Oh, DOMS is the worst.
It is. You've created microscopic tears in your muscle fibers, and the resulting inflammatory response typically peaks 48 to 72 hours later.
So it hits you like a freight train right around Wednesday morning.
Right on schedule.
Walking down a standard flight of stairs becomes a monumental athletic event. Like sitting down in an office chair requires a carefully calculated strategy.
And by the time your next scheduled training session arrives on Thursday, the gym is no longer associated with exciting possibility.
No, it is intimately biologically associated with dread.
It feels like a literal punishment. And human beings are fundamentally not wired to repeatedly volunteer for physical punishment without an immediate payoff.
So the mind just begins negotiating an escape route.
It doesn't scream, "I quit forever." It simply whispers, "I've had a really long week. My legs are completely shot. There's no point doing a terrible half workout. I'll just rest and go tomorrow."
And tomorrow never happens. But, you know, even if you somehow push through the soreness, you are still fighting a massive disconnect in how the human brain processes rewards.
A fundamentally lopsided exchange.
Exactly. Think about the costs of exercise for a beginner. The actual time it takes, physical pain, the inconvenience of rerouting your evening commute.
The endless extra laundry.
Yes, the laundry. Every single one of those costs is immediate. You pay them today, in full. But the visible rewards, the weight loss, the muscle definition, improved endurance, those are incredibly slow.
It might take months to materialize.
Right. It's a textbook example of delayed discounting.
Which is such an important concept here. In evolutionary psychology, delayed discounting explains why our brains are hardwired to value immediate rewards infinitely more than future ones.
Because for our ancestors, a guaranteed calorie today was worth way more than a hypothetical one next month.
Survival demanded immediate gratification. So by the third week of your new fitness routine, your primitive brain is running an unconscious cost-benefit analysis.
It's asking, am I getting enough back for this massive expenditure of energy?
And because you can't see a new bicep yet, the brain definitively says no. The motivation collapses.
We naturally drift away from behaviors that feel highly costly and incredibly vague.
We always do.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. It's like buying an incredibly expensive, highly complex piece of furniture, but you have to assemble it yourself in the dark, and the rules say you don't even get to sit on it for 6 months.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. No wonder our brains start making polite excuses to quit. You are putting in all this intense sweat equity and getting zero immediate utility out of the chair.
Which is why enjoyment is absolutely not a luxury in the context of exercise. Many people view enjoyment as this soft metric, a nice little secondary bonus if you can find it.
But it's not.
It's not. It is the core component of the engine. The individuals who actually last past that 3-month danger zone find immediate secondary rewards long before the visible physical changes ever happen.
They're finding a way to balance the evolutionary scales.
Exactly. They latch onto the rush of endorphins and a better mood immediately after training.
Or they notice they have more focus in the afternoon.
Or they lean into the quiet pride of simply keeping a promise to themselves, or the deeply human satisfaction of mastering a new physical movement.
So they find a way to get paid by their brain today, even if the currency isn't physical appearance.
And if you do not actively curate a routine that you enjoy, or at least get immediate satisfaction from, that lopsided exchange of delayed discounting will eventually bankrupt your willpower.
Okay, so if the physical routine is too punishing and the rewards are entirely too delayed, what happens when normal, messy adulthood inevitably enters the chat?
That is the ultimate stress test.
Because we build these things we confidently call routines, but they're often incredibly fragile constructions.
Most people do not actually build a resilient exercise system. They build a rigid plan that only functions correctly under pristine laboratory conditions.
Yeah, it works if you sleep perfectly for 8 solid hours, and if you leave the office exactly at 5 p.m., and if there's zero traffic on the highway.
And if your kids don't suddenly get a fever.
Right. And if you wake up feeling completely emotionally balanced, it works beautifully in theory, but real life shatters that pristine theory instantly.
Real life is random, chaotic inconvenience. A fragile routine breaks the absolute second your Tuesday stops behaving the way you meticulously planned it on Sunday.
Which is exactly where our cultural definition of consistency gets so warped.
Hmm. We imagine consistency as this heroic, cinematic display of willpower, battling fiercely through every single obstacle life throws at us.
But true consistency isn't heroic at all, is it?
Not at all. It is simply reducing the sheer number of things that have to go perfectly right for the behavior to happen. The person who successfully goes to the gym for years isn't necessarily a more disciplined human being.
They just have significantly fewer moving parts in their daily plan.
Exactly.
Wait, I need to jump in here and challenge this idea of fragile routines.
Sure.
Let's think about the listener whose schedule is already pure chaos. If someone has intrinsically bad sleep, a high-stress corporate job, and young kids running around, their routine basically has to be rigidly scheduled, right?
You would think so.
Otherwise, they'll just never go. Are you saying that by trying to control their chaotic environment with a strict 5 a.m. daily schedule, they are actually making failure more likely?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it all comes down to the mechanics of biological and logistical fit. This is where people intensely blame themselves for a failure of character that is actually just a severe design flaw in their system.
Give me an example of that.
Well, if you are naturally an evening person-like, your circadian rhythm peaks later in the day, and you try to aggressively force a 6 a.m. workout routine on top of pre-existing sleep deprivation and high stress, failing at that isn't a failure of your discipline.
It is forcing a complex behavior into the completely wrong biological slot.
Exactly. A routine that looks flawless and highly disciplined on paper will always fail if it operates in direct opposition to your actual energy rhythms and life constraints.
So fit is deeply underrated.
Achieving a proper logistical fit is the literal difference between quitting in month 1 and thriving in month 6.
It's like trying to run a diesel engine on unleaded gas, letting it completely break down, and then getting mad at the car for being lazy.
That's a great way to look at it.
But there's another layer of profound friction here that we have to talk about, and it's arguably much heavier than the physical fatigue of lifting weights. It's the mental friction, the identity crisis.
Oh, the identity component is huge.
Because going to a gym, especially as a beginner, turns internal uncertainty into a highly public experience.
It is an incredibly vulnerable environment. You are stepping into a brightly lit room with wall-to-wall mirrors where you might not know how to adjust the equipment.
You might feel physically inadequate compared to the regulars around you.
And your own mind is aggressively scanning the room for judgment, even if absolutely no one is actually looking at you.
I want to break down exactly why that feels so exhausting. It's the mechanics of cognitive dissonance. Your brain absolutely despises it when your physical actions don't match your internal self-concept.
It creates a literal clash in the mind.
Right. If you view yourself as not a fitness person, or if you feel like an imposter, but you are physically standing in a weight room, your brain experiences cognitive dissonance. It's a measurable psychological friction between who you think you are and what you are currently doing.
And to resolve that highly uncomfortable friction, your brain tries to convince you to leave the environment.
If every single visit to the gym quietly reinforces this internal narrative of, I am far behind everyone else, or I am awkward, the psychological cost of attending becomes overwhelmingly high.
You aren't just pushing against a barbell, you're fighting your own self-concept.
Exactly.
This raises an important question, though. What happens when the physical environment itself constantly feels hostile to your self-concept?
The internal tension just makes mere repetition exhausting.
Right. People who stick with exercise actually undergo a profound identity shift long before they ever undergo a physical transformation.
They stop viewing the gym as this intimidating, hostile place they visit temporarily to, like, fix themselves.
And they start relating to it simply as an environment where people like them go to move their bodies.
But how do you practically force that identity shift? You certainly don't do it alone.
No, you really don't.
We have this culturally ingrained, almost mythological idea that fitness is a solitary act of sheer grit. You know, the lone wolf grinding away in the dark while everyone else sleeps.
Which is very cinematic, but rarely sustainable.
Right. In reality, human behaviors need weight to stick, and that weight comes from social anchors.
Evolutionarily speaking, being cast out of the tribe was a literal death sentence for our ancestors. So our brains heavily prioritize social obligations.
And the numbers back this up in fitness, don't they?
They strongly support this. Exercise that deliberately incorporates social support, whether that is joining a group class, committing to train with a friend, or even just building a rapport with the front desk staff, shows significantly better long-term adherence.
Because if you train entirely alone in a total vacuum, your absence has zero consequences in the real world.
If you skip a Tuesday session, it just disappears into the ether.
You've only disappointed your future self. And let's be entirely honest with ourselves. Our future self is the easiest person in the world to let down.
We hit the snooze button on our future selves every single day.
We really do. But if someone expects you to be there, if a friend is physically standing by the treadmills waiting for you, suddenly the behavior has immense gravity.
That social accountability creates a sturdy bridge right over the 3-week wall. When your internal motivation naturally dips, the external pressure of social obligation carries you through the friction until the biological habit is fully formed.
It transfers the heavy lifting from your internal, exhaustible willpower over to an external structure.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for us? We've explored the emotion engine fading, the severe punishment of designing for the ideal self, the reality of delayed discounting, fragile routines, and the heavy friction of cognitive dissonance.
That's a lot of hurdles.
It is. So we need to fundamentally redefine what success looks like for you, the listener, right now. Because if you keep hitting that wall, you have been playing the wrong game entirely.
The ultimate goal is absolutely not figuring out how to artificially pump yourself full of emotion so you feel incredibly excited to exercise for the rest of your life.
Because that is biologically impossible.
Right. The real goal is to build a version of exercise that still reliably happens when your motivation is completely ordinary.
When you feel apathetic, tired, and uninspired.
Which means we need a totally new starting line.
If you are starting a new fitness regimen, success in that first month should look embarrassingly modest by internet influencer standards. I'm talking fewer sessions, much lower intensity, shorter duration.
Keep it incredibly simple.
The goal of month 1 isn't to dramatically transform your physical body. It is purely to make returning for month 2 feel psychologically possible.
Because biological habit formation takes much longer than we culturally acknowledge. It's often closer to a couple of months than a couple of weeks.
So hitting that 3-week wall and feeling a strong urge to quit isn't proof that you are fundamentally broken or lazy or incapable.
No, it is actually just the very first honest week of the real process. The emotional honeymoon is finally over, and now you are simply gathering operational data.
Quitting at week 3 isn't a moral failure. It is extremely expensive feedback. It is your life asking you highly diagnostic questions.
Like, was the routine too lonely?
Was it too physically punishing?
Was it entirely dependent on you having a perfectly stress-free day at the office?
Did you demand dramatic, visible results before you actually earned a baseline level of trust with your own body?
And when you answer those diagnostic questions honestly, without judgment, you can rebuild a genuinely resilient system. You build a routine based on the messy reality of your life, not the cinematic fantasy of it.
The point of those early weeks is not to prove to anyone how hardcore you are or how much muscular pain you can tolerate. The point is to build something you do not constantly need to plot and escape from.
Make it sustainable.
If the first week is that highly edited cinematic montage, you need to make sure the gritty documentary of week 3 is a show you actually want to keep filming.
It's a substantially less glamorous goal than the dramatic 30-day transformation montage, But the realities of human behavior clearly show it is the only method that actually works in the long run.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to really mull over. Take a step back from the gym for a second and look at your other big goals, your other habits. Maybe it's learning a new language or trying to write a book or finally managing your finances.
You all have them?
Where else in your life are you currently relying on a highly fragile routine built exclusively for your ideal self instead of building a resilient, messy system for the real you who actually has to survive a random Tuesday? Think about how you can systematically lower the friction in those areas right now, today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and thanks for listening to TalkKast.